It seems that every few days I have to do another video talking about the Russian economy and just how poorly it's going and that sort of thing. And I focus on different things. Here in one video, I'm talking about the lines at the gas stations. In another, it might be about the ruble and the economy. Directly. In another, it might be about like oil tankers that are getting blown up, or refineries that are getting blown up, or tankers that are off the coast. Here, you're going to see a smattering of those kind of things. Let's start here looking at this. And again, I'm going over the last 4 days, just 4 days in the Russian economy, and I'm going in chronological order, November 30th, 2025. So war is devouring Russia's money. Putin signs a record high military budget, so he's not planning on going anywhere, and that's pretty clear by the diplomatic responses yesterday. Russia will pour at least 166 billion into its war against Ukraine in 2026. That's about 1/3 of all national spending, the highest share of military expenditures since the Soviet era. Highest share since the Soviet era. Ordinary Russians will have to tighten their belts. The Kremlin found the money by cutting social programs, raising taxes, increasing utility bills, and introducing new fees. So Putin is determined that this special military operation is going to be a victorious war for him, although he won't say the word, or, there's a law that you can't talk about it as a war in Russia. Okay, let's talk about this. December 1st, what happened here? Oil sector is sliding into crisis, and Ukraine's new U.S.-aligned sanctions hit at the weakest moment. Nearly half of all Russian oil firms are now making a loss. So there's Ukrainian kinetic sanctions that are causing some of the problem, but a bigger problem, it seems to be U.S. sanctions. So you can't say that Trump did nothing. He's not helping a whole lot, but those sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil are really, really hurting the Russian economy. Okay, here, December 1st, again, we see this. Lowest oil prices in 4.5 years are definitely not going to help the situation with Putin's already unaffordable war and spiraling economy. Again, I'm going in chronological order. I'm not like trying to build a narrative here. I'm just showing you day over day what's happening. Okay, so Brent crude, let's just look at this here. Brent crude is down here. At this rate, it's about the same rate as where it was while they were in COVID, not at the dip of COVID, but while they were in COVID, or just starting just before COVID, it dipped. I mean, like it was where did it spike? The price of oil spiked about the time that the war began, which is kind of bizarre to see. And then it's slowly come down, but most recently, yeah, it's been coming down, 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 down. Okay. So what's the solution? Well, tighten your belt, says this lawmaker. This is in 2015, Ilya Gafner, Russia's Severodonetsk region legislature, advised Russians to eat less due to rising prices. 10 years later, the same advice remains applicable to them. So I'm showing you this to show you this is the mentality. This is not him saying this now, but here's what he had to say back in 2015. The conclusion is that on average, prices have risen by 25% compared to last January. I think it's not terrible, roughly speaking. There is not enough money. We have to remember that we are Russians, Russian people. We have been through hunger, cold, all sorts of things. We just need to think about our own health and, for example, eat less. Okay, eat less. That's the kind of advice that this guy was giving, and it wasn't even right now where things are getting really, really bad. This article, or this little thing, was posted on December 1st, which is why it's here in the sequence. Okay, December 2nd, Iraq has decided to transfer Lukoil's local assets to American oil companies. So Lukoil is about to lose its largest single asset abroad. Now, there's plenty within Russia, but abroad, a total of 12 billion barrels of oil reserves in Iraq handed over to an American company. December 2nd, Turkey slashes Ural's oil price purchases down by 1/3 in a month. Again, that's a consequence of the sanctions. That's a direct consequence of the sanctions. Reuters reports that Turkey cut its imports of Russian Urals crude by 1/3 in November compared to October amid tightening Western sanctions. Again, I talked about this the other day with India doing the same thing. Even China is trying to figure out where else can I buy my oil from because, yeah, they're trying to figure out how to get around these sanctions. Shipments fell from 300,000 to 200,000 barrels per day. Since the start of the war, Turkey has become Russia's third largest oil buyer after India and China. And such a sharp drop hits the Kremlin logistics hard. Again, the worst part of it for Russia is India, but I've talked about that extensively. Okay, December 2nd, unsellable Russian crude is now flooding the world's oceans, hitting another record. So what we're talking about is that this Russian oil, it's on these shadow fleet boats, and they're sent out, and nobody wants to take them. So these sanctions hit about here in October, and then since then, look at the number of barrels floating in the ocean without being sold. It's just gone up and up and up. Right? Before this happened, it was a reasonably straight line. Not that I can draw a straight line here, but you understand what I'm saying. December 2nd, again, value-added tax is the least painful tax, and Russians won't notice its increase from 20 to 22%, says the Russian finance minister. He's full of nonsense. Okay, a value-added tax hits things all along the value chain, and it's going to be felt. It's not going to be seen. That's the difference. You'll understand that thing that cost you $5 now costs you $6. Well, let's put it in rubles. 500 rubles now costs you 600 rubles. But you're not going to be able to. You don't detect it as an extra tax. You just know that prices went up. Meanwhile, the CEO of VTB Bank, Andrei Kosin, said that the tax hikes in 2026 will have a negative impact on business, but the Russian budget needs money, and so far it has not found any other means of increasing revenue. Tax hikes on top of high rates will further reduce business activity. That's what it's going to do. It's going to put a chilling what's the word I'm looking for? A depressing kind of feel to business. Tax hikes on top of high rates will further depress business, reducing business activity in the country, and may ultimately lead to a decline in tax revenues because less business means fewer taxes. So it like one thing leads to another, which leads back to another, which like it becomes a vicious cycle. So far, the economy is holding up, he said in an interview with Reuters. Okay, well, so far it's holding up. When it hits, it's going to hit, and it's going to hit fast. Okay, December 2nd, again, Russia's economy minister has issued a 14-page guide now instructing companies on how to structure goods-for-goods contracts, bypassing banking channels, and settle trade through physical shipments instead of money. So it's essentially barter. So I'm going to buy X number of cars. How much wheat do I have to sell you to, I'm going to give you X number of tons of wheat and you give me X number of automobiles. That's what it amounts to. At least 8 barter transactions have been documented so far, swapping Russian wheat and flaxseed for Chinese cars, construction materials, and home appliances. You thought I was just making that up with that example. The reason is straightforward. Russia is running out of hard currency. Oil exports through Primorsk have dropped from 9 to 10 tankers per week to just 3. Ust-Luga fell from 12 to 13 tankers to 7 or 8. Urals crude trades more than $20 below Brent oil, and oil and gas revenues fell 35% year on year in November. Banks inside and outside Russia grow more hesitant to process Russian-linked payments. Many foreign partners refuse rubles entirely. So Moscow has revived the same barter practices that defined Russia's post-Soviet economic collapse in the 1990s. It's slower, it's less efficient, and leaving Russia more exposed to exploitation by stronger trading partners. Of course it's slower. This is why you have money, because money allows you to speed up those transactions. All right, December 2nd, again. Confident that Trump's about to save him, Putin's central bank goes wild with the repo, says Jay in Kyiv. What are repos? So today, the central bank issued 3.27 trillion rubles to banks at repo auction. That just means like short-term debt. Obviously, all funds will be used to purchase government bonds and then finance the budget deficit. The emission financing of the budget deficit. Okay, so what does this mean in plain English? It means what's being said here is that they're accusing the government central bank of printing money to cover a huge hole in the federal budget. Essentially, yes, it's not directly printing money. That's not what's really happening here. But what's really happening is essentially the effect of if you printed money. It's indirect monetary subsidization of the deficit. So the economic effect is the same as if they were printing money. The ministry gets cash, then it spends it mostly on the military. The banks now hold these bonds, and those bonds are pledged to the central banks as collateral for the repo loans. That's how it'll work. The result will be that the budget deficit is financed by newly created central bank liquidity, not real savings. And so that's going to be problematic. It's one of the reasons that economists are now looking at Russian inflation has to accelerate in 2026 to 2027. There's no way when you do this kind of thing, you can't by fiat suspend the laws of economics. Okay, and that leads to this. December 3rd, Russian government kills another ambitious infrastructure project due to a lack of funds. Yeah, so they were going to have this railway from Siberia to China, but it's not happening. There was a big like, yay, we're going to do this thing, and it's just not going to happen. Last little bit, December 3rd, Andrei Klimenko, head of the Black Sea Institute of Strategic Studies and project expert at the Monitoring Group of Sanctions and Freedom of Navigation on the results of seaborne exports from Baltic ports, crude oil only, from November 2025 compared to October's peak. Crude oil volume is decreased by 15% from the Black Sea. Number of tankers, 99 in October versus 87 in November. Other indicators are 75 of the 87 tankers are still at sea, as I just told you. So, yeah, it's bad. This is just talking about the Black Sea. It's not talking about elsewhere. It's just the Black Sea. And data for other geographic regions like the Baltic will soon be available. But the initial shock of the first 10 days led to a 31% drop, which was then subsided. So this is talking about this is another shock that's ongoing that's going to continue to have a ripple effect. So it all ties together. And, the picture that comes to my mind is hey, buddy, can you spare a dime? Or in this case, a ruble. And I think that's a fair picture. Now, will Putin continue to do the same kind of thing, artificially inflating the economy or stealing money from all oligarchs in order to keep making the engine work? Yeah, he's going to keep doing these things. At a certain point, something's going to give. I don't know when that point is, but it's coming. All right, my friends, tell me what you thought about what you saw here. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.